Tuning in to the Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session. It is Wednesday, January 19th, 2022. It is 2:03 p.m. This meeting is being live streamed on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I am Carolina Mejia, Chair of the Board. Vice Chair Ty Menser joining us via Zoom. Commissioner Gary Edwards behind me, and to my left is County Manager Ramiro Chavez. Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell via Zoom. And then we have an array of staff also joining us for speed limits on county roads. So with that, do I hand it over to Scott Lindland, our county engineer?
Thank you, Commissioner. Matt Unzelman will be leading this one.
Okay. Matt.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, and thank you for your time today. I'm Matt Unzelman, Thurston County Traffic Engineer, and I'm joined today by Becky Kahn as well, who's a civil engineer in our traffic engineering department. You will not see Becky today, though, because she is having camera issues, unfortunately, but she is there with us. We'll be providing you with information on how Public Works establishes and maintains speed limits on Thurston County jurisdictional roads. We'll also be seeking direction from the Board of County Commissioners on some proposed changes to a county resolution that sets the local requirements for evaluating and establishing speed limits. From experience, I can tell you that speed limits are a very controversial issue. A good portion of the service requests we receive here in Public Works are regarding speed limits. Becky and myself spent a lot of time with commissioner staff, including Katie, Thomasina, Sarah, and Robin, on many citizen complaints regarding speed limits. We also work closely with the Sheriff's Office on speeding concerns as well. Most people don't understand the complexities behind setting speed limits. It's not as simple as going out in the field and putting up a sign with whatever speed you think is a good speed for that road. Speed limits cannot be taken lightly. There's a lot of liability incurred by the county if the speed limits are set incorrectly. And Becky's going to be talking a little bit more about that later. With that, I'm going to let Becky jump in and present to you how we establish speed limits in Thurston County. And following that, I'll be discussing some proposed changes we're seeking direction from the board on.
Thanks, Matt. I'm going to start by briefly going through our agenda for today. First, I'm going to be reviewing the national, state, and county standards that guide how speed limits are set. Then I'm going to move on to talk about the importance of setting appropriate speed limits on our roadways. I'm going to walk through the speed limit revision process that is currently in place here in Thurston County. And finally, I'm going to pass it back over to Matt, as he said, to review County Resolution 12083 and some changes we would like to propose. So beginning at the federal level, we have the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, or the MUTCD, which is adopted as the national standard and is applicable on all public roadways. Going down to the state level, we have RCW 46.61.415, which states that local agencies may establish speed limits between 20 miles per hour and 60 miles per hour on their roadways. At the county level, we looked at Thurston County Code 12.105, which states that all county roadways have a speed limit of 50 miles per hour unless established otherwise. To establish a different speed limit, it must be adopted by the board and listed in the Thurston County speed limit schedule. The code also sets school zones at 20 miles per hour and residential plats at 25 miles per hour. Finally, we have Thurston County Resolution number 12083, which outlines the process we follow when conducting a speed limit engineering study. This resolution puts restrictions on what speed limit can be established on a roadway. These restrictions are based on two metrics that are widely used in the traffic engineering world: the 85th percentile speed and the 10 mile per hour pace speed. The 85th percentile speed is the speed at which 85 out of 100 cars on a given roadway travel at or below. This is the speed that most motorists feel comfortable and safe driving at, and it gives a great starting point when deciding what speed limit should be set on a given roadway. The 10 mile per hour pace speed is the 10 mile per hour range for example, 37 to 47 miles per hour, that the bulk of the vehicles are traveling in. Based upon the regulations I just went through, speed limits may be reviewed and revised. I would like to take a moment to touch on the importance of setting appropriate speed limits. The primary purpose of speed limits is to enhance safety by reducing risks imposed by drivers' speeding choices. The intent is to reduce disparities in speeds, which could result in drivers making inappropriate decisions, like passing when they don't have enough room to pass, and we would like to be reducing potential vehicle conflicts. Choosing not to adopt a proposed speed limit, which is proposed using processes outlined in county code and based upon an engineering study, could open the county to liability concerns in the future. Now that we've reviewed the different metrics that guide how we set a speed limit, I'm going to go through the current speed limit revision process here in Thurston County. We have broken the process down into 5 main steps, starting with receiving a request for a speed limit revision and ending with the board's consideration and adoption. So step 1, receiving a request. Speed limits in Thurston County can get reviewed for a variety of reasons, but it is mostly due to citizen requests, as Matt mentioned. These requests are almost always asking for a lower speed limit on roadways that the requester drives every day. These requests come in a variety of ways, including phone calls, emails, service requests, and through the commissioner's office. Some reviews are also generated by staff during safety reviews. They could also come about through the permitting or development process, or if there are changes to a roadway, such as adding lanes or shoulders, changes in the driving surface condition, or increased traffic volumes. In the December 15th, 2020 public hearing regarding speed limit revisions, the board expressed concern over the lack of public involvement at the public hearing and wondered why staff would consider a speed limit revision based upon a single service request. Staff took time to review the current speed limit process and consider alternate approaches. We reached out to other counties through the Washington Association of County Engineers and received numerous responses. The general response was that speed limits are evaluated on a case-by-case basis, usually in response to a citizen request. So we really fall in line with other jurisdictions' processes. After we receive a request, the step 2 is to conduct an engineering study. Many different factors are considered and investigated through measurements and field review. We look at traffic characteristics such as how fast cars are traveling, how many cars and trucks there are, how much pedestrian activity there is, and what collisions have occurred in the area in the past. We also look at roadway characteristics such as curves and hills along the road, the spacing and number of driveways, the road surface condition, and speed limits on adjacent roadways. These factors are important because they may require more driver attention, and we want to make sure that they are traveling at a speed where they can make the necessary decisions and have time to react. If the results of the engineering study fall in line with the speed limit that is currently posted on the roadway, then the requester is advised and the process is stopped. If, however, the engineering study finds that speed limits could be lowered, we move on to step 3. Informal public comment is gathered, usually either through an open house or letters sent to residents along the roadway to understand the affected community's viewpoint. We are trying to hear from people that drive that road every day to get a better understanding of what they think and experience on the roadway. We record all public comment and also respond. So using the results of that engineering study, looking at the relevant public comment and the restrictive metrics outlined in resolution 12083, we come up with a revised speed limit for the roadway. These steps 1 through 4 are followed throughout the year for each speed limit request we receive, and a list of potential speed limit revisions is created. And then once a year, we take the list of proposed revised speed limits and set a public hearing for the Board of County Commissioners consideration. At the public hearing, we review the list of proposed speed limits. We discuss how we came about the new speed limit for each roadway and present any public comment that we received. At that point, the board can choose to adopt the revised Thurston County speed limit schedule by ordinance. And if that goes through, then our office would go out and place the new signs on the roadway. I'm going to pass it back over to Matt to talk about some proposed revisions we would like to make to County Resolution 12083.
Thank you, Becky. Nice job. County Resolution 12083 sets the local requirements for establishing speed limits, as Becky mentioned. Language included in that resolution states two things: that the speed limit shall not be established, one, below the lower limit of the 10-mile-per-hour pace speed, or no lower than 10 miles less than the 85th percentile speed. While we agree that these considerations are good for evaluating speed limits, they shouldn't, however, prevent us from considering other things such as collision history, design speeds, roadway geometry, the number of bicyclists and pedestrians using the roadway, the number of driveways, limited sight distance, and many other considerations. Staff is proposing to change the language in the resolution so that the 85th percentile and 10-mile-per-hour pace speeds will be used along with engineering judgment. We checked around with other agencies, as Becky mentioned before, and this would be consistent with how other local agencies are evaluating speed limits. So these next slides are to demonstrate how we would use engineering judgment in addition to the 85th percentile and 10-mile-per-hour pace speed considerations. Now, I tried to pick examples that you guys are all, that the Board of County Commissioners are familiar with, because these all came from the Commissioner's office. The first example is near exit 99, which is the Maytown exit. Case Road parallels I-5, as you can see on the left-hand side of the aerial photo, and the speed limit is 50 miles per hour. Based upon a traffic study we did in the field, the 85th percentile speed was 53 miles per hour. So 85 out of 100 cars are traveling 53 miles per hour or faster. Per the current restrictive requirements, the lowest speed that could be established on Case Road would be 45 miles per hour. Now, I want to point out some of the considerations that engineering judgment would be used for. If you look at the big gravel parking lot where Ritchie Brothers used to be, that is now Freightliner. And Freightliner, they service semi-trucks, they sell semi-trucks, and that lot is usually full of semi-trucks. And so there is semi-trucks going in and out of multiple entrances on this facility onto Case Road. You combine, so when you got slow moving semi-trucks moving in and out of the site continuously, and you combine that with traffic on Case Road coming from the south at 53 miles per hour, it creates some safety conflicts. Another consideration of this site is the west side of Case Road in the Maytown corner is currently in consideration to for permitting process to install 2.8 million square feet of warehouse space, which is even going to further increase the truck traffic on this portion of Case Road. So you combine all these factors based upon engineering judgment, it probably does make sense to use to establish a speed limit slower than 45 miles per hour, and especially when it's approaching a stop sign on Maytown. And so typically what we'll do on more urban county roads is we'll transition from a 50 mile per hour speed limit to a 30 or 35 mile per hour limit or something slower, and then to the stop condition. And for the interest of time, I'm going to skip example 2 and go straight to example 3. So this is 93rd Avenue. And so the county's portion of 93rd Avenue extends from Tilley Road at the west end next to our county facility and Old Highway 99 at the east end. Based upon a recent traffic study out there, the 85th percentile speed was 51 miles per hour. 93rd Avenue, so based upon the current restrictive requirements, the lowest speed limit that we could establish in 93rd would be 45 miles per hour. Engineering judgment could be used, however, to consider such things as 93rd Avenue in many spots has such limited shoulders that there is no shoulders. There's a lot of hills along 93rd Avenue, which restricts sight distance. And even with the lack of shoulders, there's a lot of pedestrians and bicyclists that travel along this roadway. And unfortunately, last year we had a fatality involving a bicyclist and a truck. The area in yellow that's shown on the aerial photo is the area that's actually already been annexed by the city of Tumwater. And there's been some major housing developments that have gone in there. And what that's done is not only just added a lot of traffic to 93rd Avenue, but it's also 93rd Avenue doesn't feel like that rural 50-mile-per-hour road anymore. It feels like a much more urban, slower speed roadway. So the last thing that we also consider in a situation like this is what are the speed limits around this road? And so the portion of 93rd that extends between I-5 and Tilley Road is actually owned by the Washington State Department of Transportation. And that route is actually part of the emergency detour route when there's an incident on I-5 between the Maytown exit and the Scott Lake exit. And their portion of 93rd Avenue is 40 miles per hour. So in this situation, if we establish the lower speed limit on 93rd, we'd probably establish a lower speed limit of 40 miles per hour so that you have a consistent 40 mile per hour speed limit all the way from I-5 to Old Highway 99. And that lessens driver confusion. So we hope that those examples demonstrated the need to allow for more engineering judgment when setting speed limits. We plan to approach the Board of County Commissioners in the next couple of months to set a public hearing to receive comment regarding those proposed changes to Resolution 12083. With that, that's the end of our presentation, and Becky and myself would be happy to answer any questions or receive any comments.
Thank you, Matt and Becky. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
I guess you're talking about some kind of a change, Matt. Why don't you just change shall to should? And I wonder if sometimes couldn't we have more than one citizen make a complaint? You know, I don't know, make it 3 or something that makes sense rather than one.
Sure. And I can respond to that. We've actually, if we receive a speed limit request, and sometimes I'll even tell the citizen, hey, why don't you guys do a petition? And then you got a lot, and demonstrate to us that you have a lot of community support so that we can take that forward and present that to the county commissioners so that they know that there is a lot of citizen support behind it.
Thank
What
you.
about the shall or the should?
You read our minds. That's exactly what we're planning on doing.
It is in your PowerPoint.
Yes, Becky, if you want to share that slide.
Well, maybe.
Page 17.
There you go.
So yeah, we would just strike through the shall, put the should.
And again, I want to emphasize that we're strongly going to consider the 85th percentile and the 10 mile per hour pace speed. We just need to have a little bit more flexibility. So in those limiting circumstances, we do have a mechanism to do what we feel is right.
Is that in our paperwork? Yes. Oh, yeah, I see it. Okay, I got it.
Okay, Commissioner Menzer, questions?
I don't have any questions on this. I do have a question that we had a public hearing, I think a year ago, on some stuff at Boston Harbor. It sat on my desk for about 9 months and finally I gave up and tossed it out. We never really circled back and voted on those changes. So I'm just wondering why that never got circled back.
We did vote on them. I believe 153rd was approved, and I think we took action on, oh boy, you're testing my memory.
It was like near Zangle or something. It was like,
56th. Are you thinking of Woodard Bay Road?
I'm thinking of a public hearing where there was a couple of places, but the one I remember, there was a citizen that piped up with a pretty extensive argument about why we shouldn't change it. It was out near Boston Harbor, going out toward Boston Harbor. And the board basically wanted to think about that. And I just never remember it. So maybe I missed the actual hearing where we voted.
No,
But I
I think,
don't,
I'm sorry. I think there was a miscommunication on our part. So we took that as the board took action on the other roads, but not Woodard Bay Road. So if you would like, in this next round, the speed limits, we can go ahead and include that one for reconsideration in this next round, which we anticipate in doing in a couple months.
I don't know if Commissioner Edwards remembers. I think I was inclined not to change it, but I don't think I wanted to hear kind of what my seatmates had to say. And I don't remember us ever having that conversation. So I don't know if Commissioner Edwards remembers that or not.
I think we went ahead and changed some and something we didn't change. But
Okay.
what those are, I don't know, other than I do believe 153rd was lowered to 45 or something like that.
That is correct.
I don't recall the board taking an action, not on all the recommendations, but I believe 2 out of 3, and the other one
I
didn't
think
take an
that-
action.
Okay, very good. No, this makes sense to me. So I'm good with what you're explaining today.
And I think, and we have a new seatmate this time too.
Right. I thought that we were gonna have to go back and rehash the whole thing and explain to her what that citizen said, because I looked at your briefing memo. It said the last time we addressed this was December 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, guys, if once a year goes by, I don't promise I remember anything after a year.
That's a fair comment.
Go ahead, County Manager.
Scott, Matt, Becky, thank you. So on the proposed change, they changing the word from shall to should. You know, that probably makes sense, but I'm just curious. If the intent is to allow more engineering judgment within the whole process, changing a word, will that be enough?
I believe so, because in most circumstances, like I was talking about earlier, I do think considering the 85th percentile speed and the pace speed is enough, but it's in those other cases, like I explained on 93rd Avenue, where we know that there's additional considerations that need to be considered, but because the code is a shall consider the speed limit in comparison to the 85th and the 10-mile-per-hour pace speed, it just doesn't give us that flexibility.
Okay, but you know, being a little bit involved in years past, on my past life, the whole concept of engineering judgment comes to, you know, depending on the eyes of the beholder, right? Because the engineering judgment, if we don't define whose engineer provided the judgment, opens up for a lot of conversation. So if the intent is to have engineering judgment, you may consider, for the board to consider, what is the definition of the engineering judgment and who is that engineer who imposes that judgment? Is the county engineer, which probably that would be the right, obviously, position in the county? Because having an engineering judgment, not disrespect to any of the engineers in public works, everybody can render a judgment. Is that valid enough to incorporate on the engineering judgment aspect?
No, that's a really fair question.
So,
And that's something we can certainly have that clarification on. Thank you.
Well, I trust our engineers to make the right judgment.
Okay.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
I don't have any questions or comments. Just thank you, Matt and Becky, for this presentation.
Thank you for your time.
So just to clarify, the next action the board may see is as for staff to bring an AIS to set a public hearing. So for the public to weigh in on the revisions of this ordinance. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Okay.
looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Got 2 minutes.